Hello Pro Strikers. Jonathan Haggerty is a dynamic and fearless Muay Thai fighter, and he has quickly risen to prominence in the world of combat sports. His style is a blend of technical skill and raw aggression, with Haggerty knocking out the best fighters in the world of modern Muay Thai at his weight class. A one Muay Thai and kickboxing world champion, Haggerty's sharp elbows, powerful kicks, and relentless pressure have earned him a reputation as one of the most exciting fighters in the ring today. In this breakdown, we'll dive into the techniques and strategies that make him such a formidable fighter. Let us start the breakdown by looking at Jonathan Haggerty's stance. Stance. Haggerty is a right-handed fighter and fights mostly in an orthodox stance. His base is like that of any Muay Thai fighter, light on the lead leg, ready to block, teep or left kick at a moment's notice. Haggerty stands tall to maximise his height. Leg length is an important stat in Muay Thai, and standing tall with the hips high makes it easier to raise the leg to kick and knee. Just try lifting your legs from a squatted position to see. The downside to this stance is it makes punching far less efficient, meaning the fighter has to make an adjustment when they wish to punch with power. Haggerty will step in big on his lead leg and widen his stance when looking to throw hands. The lead leg game. The teep. Haggerty's narrow stance enables him to use his best weapon freely, the teep. Teep means push in Thai, meaning the technique is primarily used for defensive purposes, to push the opponent away. A teep is more for rhythm disruption rather than to hurt the opponent. It is different to a front kick in that it uses thrusting and extension of the hips rather than snapping at the knee. Haggerty is an expert in the teep. Watching him teep Rodtang around the ring during their first encounter made a statement. A feint is a deceptive movement or action designed to trick an opponent into reacting prematurely or incorrectly. By simulating an attack or movement, the fighter can create openings, set traps, or manipulate their opponent's defence, allowing them to land strikes or execute techniques more effectively. A feint works best when the opponent respects the repercussions for not defending the technique correctly. Haggerty establishes his teep early, which means every time he so much as lifts the leg, the opponent must respect it. They must react. Haggerty will lift the lead leg with regularity as it offers him so many options in both attack and defence. The best form of defence is stopping the opponent from throwing in the first place, and a good feint does just that. It disrupts an opponent's rhythm and causes hesitation. Haggerty lifts the lead leg against his opponent, Joseph Laziri, and Laziri backs up straight away. It allows Haggerty to look at Laziri, see how he responds to the threat, his mental state and his technical ability. Did he attempt to catch it? Did he step in? Does he extend his arms for a long guard? Or does he simply retreat? All of these will present Haggerty with different options for him to cycle through. Haggerty's teep is a brilliant example of how to establish a technique and then build on it. Here we see Haggerty use a hop-in to close the distance. Laziri extends his arms out in an attempt to obstruct Haggerty, but Haggerty makes use of the fingerless MMA gloves, grabbing at the wrist of Laziri to pull his arm out the way and land an elbow. Notice how high Haggerty raises the knee as he moves forward. This sells the fake, whilst chambering the kick if Laziri were to step in. It gives Haggerty options. Now, lifting the knee high is a fantastic way to disorganise the opponent. When Haggerty is looking to score with a jab, he uses a much shorter teep fake. He only lifts the knee ever so slightly. Slipping a jab through the guard will do much more damage in an MMA glove than a boxing glove, so it's a worthwhile weapon for Haggerty to invest in. Left kicks. Haggerty's left roundhouse kick is a big problem. Because he's so light on his lead leg, it not only enables him to teep quickly, but to turn the hip over into a roundhouse kick at any moment. It makes it extremely difficult for the opponent to choose a correct defence, as when the knee is raised, they don't know if they're being hit down the middle with a teep or around the side with a round kick. Here we see Haggerty teep to the leg of Same. The teep to the thigh jars the hip and stifles an opponent's forward movement. Haggerty then immediately raises the lead leg, which forces Same to move backward. Haggerty then marches with both legs before teeping to the body as Same went to step in. This time Same catches the foot, but because Haggerty has raised his knee so high, it enables him to retract his leg and pull it away easily. As Same attempts to build into an attack, Haggerty turns a left roundhouse kick across his body, disrupting the Thai fighter's rhythm. Haggerty then switch kicks into a left low kick, attacking the lead leg of the southpaw Same. He uses the momentum of this to step back into southpaw, before faking a kick and stepping through into a punch, which Same intercepts with his own teep. This is high level stuff, people. Haggerty might not have landed the punch, but he got himself off of the ropes and had managed to hold his lead. Haggerty has such great dexterity with his lead leg, the opponent has to be able to deal with it in order to get on the inside and attack. The lead leg is not only an attacking weapon for Haggerty, and a very dangerous one at that, with his left high kick often blindsiding opponents, but it's also his first line of defence. As opponents attempt to step into range and get going, Haggerty will score and unsettle their balance. Fighters simply can't sit on the outside with him and expect to win, as he is too fast and too agile at distance. He uses his left leg like a boxer's jab. Stance switching. Haggerty loves to switch stance, and he uses it in multiple ways. The obvious reasons why a fighter will choose to switch stance are to either create space to avoid potential counters after attacking, creating more distance between them and the opponent, or to make the lead side of a fighter more powerful by bringing it back. One of the techniques that makes Haggerty such a joy to watch is his switching to southpaw, to then seamlessly step back through into orthodox with a fully loaded power strike. The step through allows him to go distance quickly and surprise the opponent. Here we see Haggerty drop back into southpaw stance and bounce on his toes. This bouncing footwork allows Haggerty to push off his toes and change direction quickly. The opponent doesn't do anything on this occasion, so Haggerty chooses to step back into orthodox, but raising the knee to fake a teep. This forces the opponent to shell up. Haggerty then controls the guard with his lead hand and falls into a power right elbow. Haggerty ultimately uses the stance switch to control the pace of a bout. It allows him to be all the way out or all the way in when he combines it with his feints off of the left leg. On this occasion, Haggerty uses the same footwork pattern, but the opponent pulls away. Haggerty changes his attack to a jab and slots it straight down the middle between the opponent's guard. Here's the same tactic once again, but this time Haggerty selects a jab to bring the hands of the opponent up before going downstairs with a power hook to the body. The tactic is always the same, but the end result might look slightly different each time. Haggerty is varied with his attacks and will cycle through different sequences to make it much more difficult for the opponent to predict what's coming. Explosiveness. In a combat sports context, the term explosive refers to a fighter's ability to generate a sudden, intense burst of power or speed. Imagine a fighter who in the blink of an eye can close the distance between them and their opponent, launching a rapid and powerful strike that can change the course of a fight instantly. This explosiveness isn't just about raw strength, it's about how quickly and efficiently a fighter can unleash their energy. It's like watching a coiled spring release all its tension at once, delivering a strike or movement that's almost impossible to anticipate. Now, what makes an athlete explosive? I'd say it's a blend of both genetics and sport-specific training. Some athletes are naturally gifted with a higher proportion of fast-twitch muscle fibres, which are responsible for those quick, forceful contractions. These fibres allow for rapid acceleration and powerful movements, giving them a natural advantage in being explosive. This is why it's important for a fighter to know their body and train accordingly. Not everybody is built to sprint, and not everybody is built to run a marathon. When it comes to fighting, I would say the average person needs to fall somewhere in the middle. The genetics alone do not play the whole story, as training plays a crucial role in developing explosiveness. Specific training and conditioning exercises like plyometrics, Olympic lifts, sprinting drills, athletes can enhance their ability to generate power quickly. We've all seen that S&C is a massive part of combat sports in the modern day. These workouts train the nervous system to fire more efficiently and improve muscle coordination, allowing the athlete to channel their strength into explosive movements. Jonathan Haggerty's style has become defined by his ability to go from 0 to 100. Something that has given him the edge, particularly against Thai-style fighters who often start fights at a slower pace, is his ability to break rhythm and catch opponents by surprise. Haggerty has multiple first-round finishes as he comes out the blocks firing. He knows he can knock out anyone at the weight, and he's willing to wager himself to get the job done early at the expense of potentially being tired down the stretch. This brings us onto Haggerty's major flaw. Flaws. the double-edged sword. Literally, a double-edged sword is a sword that has two sharpened edges. Figuratively, a double-edged sword refers to something that has both good and bad consequences. And this, for me, sums up Haggerty's style. Is Haggerty going to spark his opponent out in the opening round like he did with Nongo? Or are we going to see him slow down and get dragged into a war of attrition down the stretch?
Jonathan Haggerty, nice body shot. Nice left hand landed by Sammy Gayam.
Haggerty is an offensive whirlwind. The best defence is a good offence. The idea is that being proactive and taking strong offensive action can prevent your opponents from counter-attacking, giving you a strategic advantage, which is definitely the case with Haggerty, but it can also be his biggest weakness. He can be caught lacking when it comes to defence. Haggerty has struggled the most in fights where the opponent has been able to close the gap and stay there. Strong opponents that can match his power and apply sustained pressure. Rodtang, Samay, Lobo, Mongol Pech, Superlek have all exploited this hole in Haggerty's game, even if it's just glimpses in a fight. Haggerty can rely a little too much on the high guard as his primary form of defence in boxing range, and he can remain a little too tall in the close range, making himself a bigger target. The disadvantage to Haggerty being slightly tall at the weight is there is a lot more to hit, and he can be susceptible to being hit to the body. The teep is his first line of defence, so getting past that raised lead leg can often leave Haggerty in a compromised position. Being stood on one leg doesn't constitute good balance. When we look at mixed martial artist Sean O'Malley, a striker with a similar body type to Haggerty, he uses a lot of lateral footwork to avoid being hit. He makes sure not to be there at all. The threat of a takedown does make it more important to stay on the toes in mixed martial arts, but I feel Haggerty, with his boxing acumen and body type, could afford to sharpshoot a little more under one championship's Muay Thai rule, where the body kicks have less importance under the scoring criteria than, say, in traditional stadium Muay Thai. Haggerty gets more bang for his buck boxing in the 4-ounce mixed martial arts gloves, where punches can cause more damage and seemingly score the same amount of points as the kicks. Now, the cage in mixed martial arts is often bigger than a ring, but the circular shape of the cage in one championship allows a fighter to move around in circles much easier. Pretty obvious statement, I would say. The ring, which is a square, is much easier for pressure fighters to cut off, and I believe this played a massive factor in Rodtang's ability to cut Haggerty off in both those fights. Haggerty does have decent footwork, but because he likes to fight in combination, loading up and throwing with power, he needs his weight in his feet and the opponent in front of him, who will often plant before he throws. This means after throwing, he can get caught backpedaling in straight lines after attacking, and again often raising his lead leg. A good example of great footwork in a kickboxing context is the contest between Chingiz Alazov and Marek Grigorian. I highly recommend going to watch that full fight. Alazov used stance switching and plenty of lateral footwork to avoid being bogged down against the ropes against dangerous pressure puncher Grigorian. Israel Adesanya was also another man that moved really well under the kickboxing rule set, rarely letting himself get pinned down to the ropes and knowing when to tie up in the pocket. Now, Haggerty does have a solid clinch game, but I think he's too offensive minded and uses high energy techniques like sweeps and big throws that don't help him slow down the pace of the fight when he needs to. A great example of this tactic was seen in the Superlek vs Rodtang encounter, where Rodtang had compromised Superlek early with elbows, leaving him a bloody mess. Superlek was able to stifle the boxing of Rodtang with hand controls, grabbing at his forearms and wrists, as well as clinch types between his own scoring to secure himself the win. I might get some hate in the comments there, as many people think Rodtang deserved to win that fight. But either way, it was a great example of how to slow down an aggressive and dangerous puncher like Rodtang. Whatever the end result might be of a Haggerty fight, we shall be entertained. Going balls to the wall, throwing heavy combinations with both speed and precision, but having little to no regard for energy conservation, is always going to be slightly worrying for a Haggerty fan. As always, thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and subscribe. You can also support the channel via Patreon and access extra breakdowns and tutorials over there. I'm currently working at the UFC PI in Shanghai, and I've been putting up tips for both sparring and pad work over there. Pro Striking appreciates you more than watching John Haggerty spear opponents with teeps and blast legendary fighters out of the water with right hands.